I thought that when the time comes for me to go bald, I'll be like 55, but not 35. I've been looking at like the transplant or shaving it off. It's kind of just to kind of like rule out one option in favor of the other. Yeah, so this was like 2015. Like you could see like quite a lot of like thickness. And even though at this point I'd realized that I'd started losing hair in terms of
Okay.
receding line.
So it was on the radar back in 2015.
I had noticed because my hairline originally, it did pretty much look straight across rather than a little bit dipped towards the corners. Then about a year later, it was still looking similar, but I'd noticed that at least in the corners, like around the left and the right, that it started to go a little bit further back even then as well. But in terms of thickness, it was still looking okay. A few months and then a year later again, not much noticeable difference. I did notice around 2017 in the pictures that at least around the crown, it started to go a little bit thin, but nothing, major. I didn't have like any other patchiness towards the back or the line going across the back either at that point. Then during the lockdown, so on the left, this is probably about 3 or 4 weeks after I'd shaved it off, after I'd cut it the wrong way. So I know that I'm not going to just do like a number two or a number three because I know that it would look worse in terms of the patchiness and the
Yeah.
thin hair versus the sides. After it regrown and I'd had the first haircut again, it wasn't looking so bad. I knew that the crown was at least like, looking a bit thin, but nothing major. Even a year after I'd shaved it off, it was still looking quite thick all over, even though the hairline had started to go back a little bit. And then after that, it started getting a bit worse again. And that's when I started to put oil on it.
Oh,
So when
yeah.
I did have the oil on it, it looked obviously a lot worse because it just amplifies the patchiness by giving it that wet look. And then I think as I did keep up with the oil, it got a little bit better. But then after I'd stopped again, and I think after that it started to get a little bit worse again. I think at this point the patchiness around the back of my head started coming back, at least like that line there started to come back with the initial spot of baldness there, like or thinningness.
Yeah.
Then I sort of just accepted, okay, like slightly bigger forehead is probably just my hairline now. But at least if I'm combing it back, it's still quite thick on the front. So that was around like the start and middle of 2022. And then most recently, I think it's become a lot worse in terms of the two sides of the front hairline not really matching up. So the right side is a lot more thinned out and pushed back compared to the left. The crowns started to get worse as well. And then this is just this week now. So I can see just above the sideburn going towards like the temple area on one of the sides. It started thinning just that one corner, whereas the other one's not as bad. And then got that line going across again, just under the crown itself. And then just this part here, it just shows how thin it really is because if I'm just like pulling it forward or combing it forward, you can see that, it's quite progressed towards the back or like the middle of the head now. But then once I do like push it back again, it obviously creates that illusion that it's a bit thicker. But really, like my front view of it, like at least my eyesight makes it look different than what it actually is. But to other people, they'll obviously see the crown area here. They'll see that, one of the sides of the forehead is a lot bigger than the other. So I think yeah, that's at least like in the last like 6 months that it's been like this. So I thought, yeah, this is probably the time that I do something about it now.
Whilst we got the pictures up, what I'm interested to kind of know is after the hair transplant, honestly, like truthfully from your heart, what
Mm.
would you want the result to kind of be? What would you be happy with, like genuinely happy with, and what wouldn't satisfy what you would want from that?
Yeah. So I think probably this one here, the
Yeah.
2016 look, is probably what I'd probably be happy with. But I think I don't know how long I'd be happy with that because in my mind, I'll always know that at one point I did have a different hairline to even this. So even in this 2016 picture here, the forehead does look a bit big, at least compared to when I was a lot younger.
And so back then in 2016, that was something you were conscious of, was it? And
Yeah, even back then I was conscious of it.
right, right. And it would play on your mind and you worry a bit about it and things, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I think I'll always like second guess it in a way. So I think no matter like what hairline I do, whether it's like a completely straight one or just like a natural look, I'll always second guess it. And obviously natural look's always going to look much better anyway. But I think just in terms of this hairline here, I think even back then, I was using the longer bits on the side of the hair to
Oh,
almost like cover the slight patch that I know that was coming. I've now got a week before this consultation, and I'm in two minds. Yeah, I'm
how
going to just think
think about
about
it. Yeah.
yeah around it, and then take a decision. See, that came off without even like struggling. So it's been almost 2 weeks since I've shaved the hair off now. I wanted to give myself that time just to look at the two options, obviously, one being just shave it off, and then the other one being to have a look at just getting a transplant. And obviously, the transplant for me, so I spoke to them, well, for them to have a look at the hairline in person, and I just wanted to have a few look at their pictures of previous people that had had the hair transplants done. Yeah, for many people it works, but for me it was just not the right option. So I thought easiest option, free option, and like the option that's sort of in my control has always been just to either cut it very short or to shave it off. My main intention of going to see them in person was not just to like convince myself of doing it. It was more to kind of back up the points of why I didn't want to have it done anyway. Nothing convinced me that I should go for it. I never wanted to like just have this idea of shaving my head without a date of when I do it. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to keep it to myself either. So I started telling people that I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
So I knew that the next time I see them, they're expecting something different, not just to kind of ease the reaction, but also that in my mind, I've got that as a deadline. I think leading up to it in the last half an hour, it was a little bit of a nervous feeling. Even when I was doing it, I was still feeling a little bit nervous of how is it going to look at the end? Am I going to have like a weirdly shaped head? Is the color going to be all different? Or am I going to have a really shiny head compared to what I thought I might have? And then as I got through the first pass and the majority of the hair was off, after that, I think that feeling went.
Yeah.
So as soon as I did that first pass, it came off with no effort, through the front. There was almost nothing left on there. I could see the scalp. Um, and yeah, I thought, okay, like at that moment, I knew that, okay, this is the right decision and I made the right choice. Coming back to like, the decision that I made at the start. There were days between where I was thinking maybe I shouldn't do it, I'll just leave it. I'll try the regain again, might do the derma roller. But I think as the weeks went on and I could see a difference in the hair in terms of it falling out on the pillow or when I'm washing my hair. And then when I was going to a few weddings and so on, and you'd see it in the pictures, I thought, yeah, I don't want to carry on with this anymore because it's not just the whole process of it and putting up with the thin hair. It's also the routine of going for haircuts to make it look like something it's not. In terms of like the first moment being outside, I went outside to bring the bins in. I thought, do I go out just like this or do I put a hat on? And I actually put a hat on,
Okay,
only
interesting.
because, only
Interesting.
because nobody had actually seen it yet. I kind of had to get used to it. So I stayed outside in the garden for a bit without a hat. So I slowly phased myself into little bits
Mhm.
with or without a hat. So when I went to do the first lot of food shopping, I wore a hat, but then that was the last time. After that, I've not worn it since.
Good.
I started to send pictures to family of like, this is the new look. So I didn't send it to everybody. And I had sort of like different responses back when I sent them a picture. My dad, for example, he just sent like a grinning emoji. My mom said, okay, not bad. My friends said it really suits you. Different to what I thought in terms of how it would be afterwards, but in a good way.
What I really want to know as well is you in yourself and things. Like, how have you been feeling?
I'm used to it now and I like it. And I think before I used to look a lot in the mirror and like, have to like dip my head down and look up. And yeah, I don't really have any regrets. probably a little bit regretful that I didn't do it earlier.
One thing I've always got to ask is if there's any sort of message or anything that you feel, something that you've learned from your experience or your journey that you think was particularly helpful for you that could perhaps help someone who was in your similar position.
The one thing that I'd probably say, obviously based on my own experience with it, is I've probably thought about hair loss since I was about 17 or 18 when I first started noticing the receding hairline. And I think ever since then, I've probably overthought the whole thing. So I'd probably say that I regret obviously overthinking the whole process in terms of not just losing the hair, but also shaving it off. And I think back then it was probably more like related to the young age
Mm.
and the fact that it wasn't as bad back then compared to recently. So I'd say, yeah, don't overthink it, at least in the way that I did for years. You can make a lot of changes to just like, fitness, diet, health, and so on, which will help with the overall look as well and the way that it makes you feel in terms of your looks. If you're obviously like, losing the hair on top, change something else or do something else. And you'll probably start ignoring that going forwards. And I think whatever you're thinking, in your own head about the way you're looking, other people don't really care as much, or they don't, overthink it to the level that you are. And I think, at least for me, that was a lot more obvious when I saw people in person at work, where they didn't notice anything. And that's for the people that you know. People that you don't know, that you're just walking past on the road, they wouldn't know the difference from you having hair or not having hair, in the space of a week or not. So, yeah.
I've really enjoyed seeing you kind of handle this and kind of take charge of it and do something with it and kind of really make a stance on it.
Yeah, definitely happy with the choice.
Excellent. Good for you, man. Good for